During a segment about Vice President Kamala Harris on the Fox propaganda show The Five, the right-wing co-host rolled out this tired racist trope that the vice president was basically a diversity hire, an affirmative action pick with no meaningful qualifications or talents to her name. And then they were shut down brilliantly by our queen, Jessica Tarlov, who is the one lone sane voice on the Fox show. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Okay, folks, again, one of the things I pride myself on this channel is not really indulging in culture war talking points. It's boring to me. I think it's missing the forest for the trees. More often than not, I think policy and electoral politics are much more important. But the right wing is driven by culture war grievances. It's the only thing on which they can compete. They're very good at weaponizing culture war talking points and appealing to people's bigotry, their racism, their homophobia, their transphobia, right? Because again, they can't compete on any meaningful policy gains. And with Vice President Harris, this has been a recurring theme in terms of criticizing her. It's nothing new. And so the Fox News show The Five rolled it out again, predicated on a recent interview between the New York Times and Vice President Harris. We're going to play some clips here, kind of set it up, play a segment of the interview in question. And then I want to get to Jessica Tarlov's response because it is brilliant. It is an absolute brilliant refutation of, again, this racist trope. And a reiteration of the fact that actually Republicans indulge in identity politics all the damn time. But let's start with this clip.
I would pick a woman to be my vice president.
Are you committed to naming a black woman as your vice presidential running mate?
I am not committed to naming any but the people I've named, and among them there are 4 black women.
Well, that's apparently news to Kamala. The vice president sounding completely confused when she was asked this by the media.
He came to the decision that he needed to choose a black woman. How should it matter? Does it matter that narrative has existed, that Biden needed to choose someone who was a black person? And should it matter?
I don't think I understand your question.
Does it matter that kind of narrative around Biden needed to choose a black woman as a running mate still exists and has hovered over that selection? Or
it happened. I don't think I understand you. I honestly don't understand your question. He chose a black woman. That woman is me. So I don't know that anything lingers about what he should choose. He has chosen.
You know, if all we get out of the Biden administration is this one clip, then it will have all been worth it.
So again, that's the clip in question. It's an excerpt from an interview with the New York Times between Vice President Harris and a gentleman by the name of Herndon, and I'm blanking on his name, but it's a really long, extensive interview, and then they transcribe it in an expose. You should definitely check it out. But they're teeing it up, and Vice President Harris is trying to make the case that, listen, that was a question, obviously, for particularly a lot of people on the right, but the decision was made, and I've been vice president for 3 years now, so why is the questioning still lingering? And to be sure, before I play the second clip, I'm not saying that anybody on the left or the right, progressive, conservative, whatever, are obligated to like Kamala Harris. There are legitimate reasons if you want to make them, if you find her a particularly weak candidate. But this idea that she was just a diversity hire, that she has no qualifications to her name, that she has no talents to her name, it's disgusting, it's despicable, and it's a complete reduction of who she is as a person, as Jessica Tarlov is going to get into here. So let's play the clip, and again, we'll unpack it together.
I need to go through a bunch of things first. So no one thinks, who's being an honest broker about it, that Donald Trump is going to get 22% of the black vote. Not because he didn't do better than other Republican candidates, but because that would mean that the entire electoral system in America has been upended in 4 years, while the man is facing 4 indictments and 91 felony counts.
But look at the president.
Okay, I'm just saying. I look forward to talking about it after the November election. The man is not getting 22% of the vote. They also had him winning the youth vote. Please, I have a bridge to sell you. Okay, politics is all... What is that?
That one went over my head, too. Don't worry.
Awesome. Well, at least we share that. Oh, I get it now. Okay. All of politics is identity politics. I don't think anyone is going to tell me genuinely that Sarah Palin was the most qualified pick for vice president in 2008. John McCain needed a lady, and he picked a lady. Mike Pence and Donald Trump have zero in common, except that they wanted to win the presidency. And what did Donald Trump get from Mike Pence? He got a nice, conservative, evangelical man that would make a philanderer seem palatable to the Republican base. And then he was able to win. Representation, giving groups representation, does not mean that it is a hire without merit. I went back through Kamala Harris's record today because I knew we were going to talk about it. She was DA, she was Attorney General in California, and then she was a senator. Things like the Back on Track program, the Homeowner Bill of Rights, what she did to get Proposition 8 overturned in California after it went to the Supreme Court, and then she married the first gay couple once the marriages resumed. And if you listened to her questioning of Trump's nominees when she was a senator, she destroyed Bill Barr up there. So saying that this woman was not qualified or that her candidacy was not without merit, I think is completely unfair and denigrating the woman. And I think she should have used this as an opportunity to talk about how important it is that underserved groups are represented, that it doesn't.
So 100%. Jessica Tarlov is really great at pushing back there that, listen, identity politics are part and parcel of politics as a whole, even in modern times. And it's not exclusive to the left. It's not exclusive to the Democratic Party. The right and the Republican Party do and have and perhaps forever shall engage in identity politics, particularly when you're trying to cobble together a winning presidential ticket, right? When you have two people on the ticket, you try to complement them in some way where each party appeals to a particular demographic and one shores up weaknesses in the other. That's strategic politics. It's always been the case on either side of the aisle. And she's right. Listen, so I didn't follow Vice President Harris's career when she was a district attorney, when she was the Attorney General of California, the second biggest, legal system in the United States, California, underneath the federal government itself. I did follow her quite a bit when she was a senator. And I mean, her prosecutorial instincts, whether you like it or not, she was an incisive debater. She was a skilled interrogator. And yes, that exchange between then attorney, well, he wasn't the Attorney General yet. It was during his confirmation hearing, Bill Barr, who himself, even though I despise him, is a brilliant litigator, a brilliant attorney. He was the Attorney General under George H.W. Bush. She savaged him. She just completely outmaneuvered him, outfoxed him in that interview. It's about 4 or 5 years old, that exchange now. This is a woman who, again, whether you agree with her politics or not, whether you find her uncharismatic or not, and listen, a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't find Kamala Harris particularly available or approachable, things like that. They think that she's a charisma black hole in a lot of respects, that they don't think that she's, she's been a particularly valuable partner to President Biden. There are legitimate arguments to make if that's the case you want to make. But this idea that she's just without merit and that she was just, a diversity hire, it's really gross. It's really racist. And people have done the same thing when President Biden nominated now Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? That he said he wanted to appoint the first black Supreme Court justice, and he did. And this idea was, Justice Jackson, she must be a diversity hire. No, morons, she's not. She was a brilliant jurist, a brilliant judge with a long and storied career, more experience in many respects than many of the sitting justices on this, certainly more than Amy Coney Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh. But they also wanted to expand, or President Biden also wanted to expand representation. So it's this idea that, diversity and merit are mutually exclusive. It's idiotic. They're not mutually exclusive whatsoever. And you have to understand that when you're talking about like the legal profession or the political profession, so you have Harris and Jackson, it's not like there's an exact, divinely ordained list of people with brilliant, it's like that there's not this set in stone hierarchy of the most qualified people. What you have are tiers of people, Tiers, tiers, right? You have people who have, approximate levels of competence and experience and talent, right? It's a pool. It's not a rigid list divinely ordained. And then you have to make judgments, right? So as was the case with both Harris and Jackson, you have people who are at the top of their field, right? They are in an elite tier of politicians and prosecutors and jurists, and then you make a decision. And one of the criteria that President Biden chose was he wanted to expand diversity. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's actually really, really positive. So you actually have to make the case that he that the diversity and the merit were mutually exclusive, but nobody can actually make that case with Vice President Harris or Justice Jackson because the case isn't there. They're both, when you look at their career, when you look at their experience, you look at their education, you look at their skills, their political and legal skills, the proof is there. Even if that doesn't mean you're obligated to like them. It doesn't mean that you're obligated to agree with every judicial decision that Justice Jackson makes or every political decision that Vice President Harris makes. But the racist trope that they're just diversity hires is really, really gross. And I think Jessica Tarlov does a brilliant job of shutting that down and flipping it back on Republicans. Republicans engage in identity politics every bit as much as Democrats, and anyone who says otherwise is a liar.